The gavel cracked once, echoing like a warning shot. Reporters shifted forward in their seats, pens already raised, cameras ready. The courtroom was suffocating with anticipation. JD Vance lowered himself into the defense chair, his jaw tight, eyes fixed straight ahead as if sheer willpower could bend the outcome. Jasmine Crockett rose without hesitation, her presence electric. Her gaze cut through the silence like a blade. The room seemed to tilt toward her, as though even gravity favored what was about to come. She placed a thick folder on the podium with deliberate force. "Your Honor, and for the record," Crockett began, her tone calm but sharp enough to slice steel, "we are not here to debate hypotheticals. We are here because the evidence exists. Evidence Mr. Vance would prefer you never see." A murmur ran through the gallery. Reporters' fingers danced across keyboards, live feeds flickered, and whispers rolled like thunder across the back benches. JD Vance's lips curled into a thin smile, but his fingers betrayed him, drumming against the table in an uneven rhythm. He leaned toward his counsel and whispered something quick, too sharp to catch. His attorney nodded nervously, shuffling through papers that already looked inadequate. Crockett lifted a single sheet from the folder, holding it high enough for the jury, the press, and every watching eye to see. "This is not speculation. This is a signed memorandum. Dates, amounts, signatures. Mr. Vance has tried to bury this, but the ground refused to keep it hidden." The judge leaned forward, brows furrowing. "Counsel, if you intend to present evidence, you will do so in order." "I intend to," Crockett replied, voice steady, a storm coiled beneath. "But the court should be clear from the start. This is not a minor oversight. This is a $100 million deception, and today it comes to light." Gasps erupted, sharp and uncontained. The judge banged the gavel again, demanding silence, but the words were already loose, impossible to cage. Vance's head snapped upward, his eyes narrowing like a predator suddenly cornered. His chest rose and fell faster, and the confidence he carried in looked thinner now, stretched to breaking. The press row trembled with life, phones buzzing, whispers traded, hands reaching for live stream buttons. The promise of a bombshell was no longer rumor. It was here, standing, speaking, and dragging every eye toward the defendant, and Jasmine Crockett, unflinching, let the silence return just long enough to tighten the noose before she spoke again. "Mr. Vance knows exactly what this paper means. He knows the cost. And before this hearing ends, so will the rest of America." The gavel struck once more, but the crowd had already tasted blood. The silence broke like glass. Jasmine Crockett unfolded the memorandum fully, spreading its pages across the podium with precise, deliberate hands. The fluorescent lights caught the ink, and for a moment, the courtroom was nothing but paper and truth. "This," she declared, her voice sharp and resonant, "is a financial memorandum confirming one transfer, $100 million, channeled through shell accounts tied directly to JD Vance." The gallery erupted, chairs scraped, reporters lunged forward, the air buzzed with disbelief. The judge hammered the gavel, shouting for order, but the words were drowned beneath the tidal wave of reaction. Vance jerked upright, his composure cracking. His face flushed crimson, his eyes darted between the document and the press, calculating, searching for escape. He slammed his palm on the table, drawing every eye. "This is fabricated. It's a stunt, nothing more." Crockett didn't flinch. She raised the top page, displaying the bold signatures at its base. "Not fabricated, signed, dated, verified, and Mr. Vance, you know exactly whose name sits beside yours?" A collective gasp swept the room. The signatures gleamed in black ink, corporate executives, political donors, and at the bottom, unmistakably, JD Vance himself. One juror's eyes widened, lips pressed into a line. Another leaned forward as if pulled by gravity toward the revelation. The defense counsel scrambled, fumbling with objections. "Your Honor, this is out of context." "Overruled," the judge cut him off, gavel striking again. "Proceed." Crockett leaned closer to the microphone, her words low, deliberate, calibrated to pierce. $100 million siphoned under the guise of development funds, but the paper trail doesn't vanish, and today it stands in this courtroom. Vance slammed back in his chair, muttering curses too faint for the microphones, but clear enough for those seated nearby. His bravado shrank, his smile gone, replaced with the twitch of a man cornered. The spectators shifted from disbelief to frenzy. Phones lit up, screens filled with live updates. The bombshell had detonated, and its shrapnel was already racing beyond the courtroom walls. Crockett let the moment breathe, the weight of the document pressing down on every corner of the room. Then, with cold finality, she said, "This is not rumor. This is evidence. And the people deserve to see the truth." The courtroom trembled under the roar of the crowd, gasps, whispers, and the scratching fury of pens capturing history as it happened. The courtroom hadn't yet regained its balance when the first clip escaped. A reporter in the second row, phone angled just enough, had captured Crockett's words and the damning image of JD Vance's signature. Within 30 seconds it was online, raw and unedited, the caption screaming, "100 million bomb exposed in court." On the sidewalks outside, the crowd multiplied. Protesters pressed against barriers, their chants rising in waves. "Answer the money!" "Show the truth!" Police radios crackled, dispatchers overwhelmed with calls about swelling numbers around the courthouse. Inside, the gallery buzzed with a fever that no gavel could suppress. Reporters slipped out one by one, clutching their devices, sprinting toward live feed vans. Networks scrambled to cut into programming. "Breaking news! What you're seeing right now may alter the course of JD Vance's career forever." Crockett stood tall, silent for a moment, letting the storm she'd unleashed roar through the chamber. The judge's calls for order faded beneath the avalanche of reaction. She didn't need to say more. Her evidence was already echoing across televisions, car radios, and phones in every diner and living room. Vance leaned forward, gripping the edge of the defense table so tightly his knuckles whitened. His counsel whispered frantically, but the whispers were drowned by the growing thrum outside. The faint chant of voices seeped in through the walls, transforming the courtroom into an island under siege. In newsroom after newsroom, anchors repeated the words as if they were a mantra. $100 million bombshell. The phrase caught fire, repeated, clipped, remixed, spat back out across every platform. Hashtags surged, timelines flooded, hashtags trended at record speed. On a late-night radio station, a host interrupted music mid-song. "Ladies and gentlemen, you need to hear this. Jasmine Crockett just dropped a $100 million grenade in open court, and JD Vance was left stunned. I repeat, stunned." Vance's face grew taut, the weight of the outside world pressing into the chamber. It wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a spectacle, and he was the unwilling centerpiece. Every movement, every flicker of his expression now belonged to millions of eyes. And still Crockett did not move. She let the silence circle her, a storm eye amid chaos, while the courtroom, the city, and soon the nation reshaped around the truth she had laid bare. JD Vance slammed both palms against the defense table, the sound cracking like a shot through the courtroom. His voice, sharp and ragged, tore across the silence. "This is a fabrication! A political hit job, nothing more!" His attorney leapt to his side, nodding furiously, waving a stack of papers as if they could shield him from the tidal wave outside. The microphones caught every syllable, and the moment was already gone, ripped from the courtroom and broadcast live. Loyal networks aligned within minutes. A stern-faced anchor on a sympathetic channel declared, "These so-called documents, they reek of forgery. Crockett is staging theater." But Crockett didn't retreat. She leaned forward, her voice steady and cutting. "If this were theater, Mr. Vance, you would have rehearsed your lies better. The signature is yours. The dates are yours. The money is yours." The gallery gasped, feeding on the clash. Reporters scribbled madly, the exchange spilling into real-time headlines. Vance fights back, Crockett strikes harder. Outside, counter-protests ignited. A convoy of buses unloaded supporters, waving placards painted with slogans. "Defend Vance!" "Stop political smears!" Cameras swarmed them, amplifying the chaos. But just as quickly, the opposing chants surged louder. "Where's the money, JD?" Inside, the defense scrambled to plant doubt. A press release hit inboxes within the hour, branding the evidence as a forgery orchestrated by partisan operatives. Paid surrogates stormed social media, flooding timelines with hashtags like Ashinch or fake files and Fashinch Crockett hoax. Yet the smear carried cracks. Fact-checkers moved just as fast, dissecting each claim, countering every denial with line-by-line analysis. Viral posts compared Vance's past signatures to the one exposed in court, side by side, undeniable. Vance's rage mounted. He stood abruptly, pointing a trembling finger toward Crockett. "You are exploiting this court for political gain. You will answer for this slander." Crockett didn't blink. "It isn't slander when it's signed in your own hand. And soon, the people won't just hear it, they'll see it." The judge's gavel pounded, demanding order, but the room had already slipped into theater of its own. Cameras loved the chaos, and the chaos loved JD Vance's unraveling. What was meant as a counterattack had morphed into spectacle. Each denial, each accusation only magnified the gravity of the $100 million bomb still burning in the center of the courtroom. And Crockett, silent for just a beat, let the image linger, Vance red-faced, shouting, trapped in a frame destined to loop endlessly on every screen in America. Night fell heavy over the city, but the courthouse storm spilled into the backrooms where shadows ruled. Phones lit up in every corner of power. Lobbyists called senators, donors called lawyers. And in one dim office, JD Vance's team huddled around a speakerphone, voices overlapping in panic. "We can smother this," one strategist insisted, his tone brittle. "We paint it as partisan warfare. Attack Crockett directly, dig up her votes, her past statements, bury her credibility." Vance, his face pale, snapped back. "The document won't vanish. They've seen my signature." His knuckles dug into the wood of the table. "We need leverage, something to stop her before she drives this deeper." Elsewhere, Crockett sat in a modest campaign office, her allies gathered close, veterans with worn faces, union leaders with calloused hands, activists who smelled the air and knew the tide had shifted. They leaned in, voices low but steady. "They'll try to break you," one union leader warned. "They'll call you at midnight, they'll threaten, they'll dangle money, don't blink." As if on cue, Crockett's phone buzzed. An unlisted number. She answered, calm but unyielding. The voice on the other end dripped with power cloaked in menace. "Congresswoman, you're playing a dangerous game. Back down and this goes away. Keep pressing and you'll regret it." Her reply was a razor. "The only thing I regret is that it took this long to bring it to light." She hung up, the room erupting in murmurs of approval. Back at Vance's side, another call was being placed, this one to a television network anchor known for shaping narratives. "Shift the frame," Vance's handler ordered. "Make it about partisanship, not the money. Repeat it until it sticks." But repetition could not erase the chants swelling outside. By dawn, veterans stood shoulder to shoulder with retirees, their voices hoarse but unbroken. "It's not politics, it's survival!" Workers carried hand-painted signs. "Our money, our fight." The pressure mounted not just in headlines but in hearts. For Crockett, this was no longer a courtroom skirmish, it was a movement. Every call that threatened her only hardened resolve. Every whispered attempt at leverage only drew more allies to her side. And as the sun cracked the horizon, one truth became clear. The battle was no longer about documents alone. It was about who could withstand the weight of a nation watching. The chamber was packed beyond its limits, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, air heavy with anticipation. Reporters sat poised, cameras humming, their red lights glowing like watchful eyes. Outside, the chants of protesters rolled like thunder against the courthouse walls. This was no longer just a hearing. It was Judgment Day. Jasmine Crockett rose slowly, her folder in hand, the same one that had haunted JD Vance for days. She walked to the center, heels echoing like a drumbeat of inevitability. The judge nodded, granting her the floor. She held up the memorandum once more. "Your Honor, members of the court, the defense would have you believe this is fabrication. Yet every line has been verified, every transaction traced, every signature authenticated. And today, the record will show exactly what Mr. Vance hoped you would never see." She placed enlarged copies of the critical pages onto the evidence board. Signatures filled the screen for all to witness, with one name underlined in crimson marker, JD Vance. The crowd exhaled as if the very air had been ripped from their lungs. "Not rumor, not speculation," Crockett said, voice sharpened to a blade. $100 million funneled, diverted, concealed, a betrayal of trust at the highest level. Vance surged from his chair, face flushed, sweat streaking down his temples. "This is slander! This is political assassination!" His voice cracked, the fury edged with desperation. Crockett pivoted, locking eyes with him across the courtroom. "No, Mr. Vance, this is accountability, and accountability does not bow to power." The gallery erupted. Applause thundered despite the judge's desperate gavel. Some shouted, some wept, the air alive with the raw electricity of history colliding with truth. The judge's voice strained above the chaos. "The evidence is admitted into record. Proceedings will continue with full consideration of these documents." Vance collapsed back into his seat, his shoulders slumped, his hands trembling as he covered his face. The once confident senator now looked like a man staring into the abyss of his own making. Outside, the clip of Crockett's final words spread like wildfire, on phones, on televisions, on every screen in America. Headlines screamed, "Crockett lowers the hammer." Vance cornered by $100 million truth. In union halls, in diners, in living rooms, ordinary people watched and nodded, their voices rising. It's not politics, it's survival. And as Crockett gathered her papers, calm and unbroken, she knew this was only the beginning. Vance might fight, his allies might smear, but the fracture lines were permanent now. The bombshell had landed. The fallout was irreversible. The final image broadcast across the nation was stark. JD Vance humiliated, drowning beneath evidence, while Jasmine Crockett walked steady, carrying the weight of truth like a torch into the storm.